That's all we need. I do believe. Banky does count, correct? Yes, he does. Yep. All right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 9.
Yep.
Wow, that is a thin.
All right, I will call to order the Wednesday, May 28th, 2025 City of Battle Creek Planning Commission meeting. Can we get a roll call for attendance, please?
Commissioner Hughes? Here. Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Godfrey?
Here.
Commissioner Gray?
Here.
Commissioner Morris?
Here.
Commissioner Dennison? Commissioner Moten? Commissioner White? Mayor Banky?
Here.
Thank you for that. All right, on to approval of the minutes, this being the April 23, 2025 meeting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the minutes be approved as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign. Minutes are approved. All right, correspondence. So we did receive some correspondence. We've got written correspondence from what appears on two different times from the same individual. All of the commissioners have received a copy. Both letters are from a nearby resident at 280 Newtown Avenue expressing opposition to the proposed rezoning. While the resident could not be here in person, we do appreciate that they took time to provide feedback, and we will consider that during our deliberations. Any additions or deletions?
No additions, no deletions.
All right. On to public hearings and deliberations. As a reminder to all, with public hearings, we'll hear from the staff, then from the applicant, and then open the floor for public comments. We ask that when coming forward, you state your name and address. We will limit the comment to 3 minutes this evening. Once comments are completed, we will close the public hearing. If you want to comment on something not specific to the public hearing, you will be provided time to do so later in the agenda. We'll take comments at that time. As a reminder to the commissioners, the role of this body today is to hold a public hearing on the rezoning, review the proposed changes, and put forth a recommendation to the City Commission. Any change recommended by the Planning Commission must be approved by the City Commission. With that, we will now open the public hearing for consideration on the rezoning request number R01-25.
So just to give a brief history here for folks who may not have been on the Planning Commission, it would have been early 2023. This area of the city in early 2023 was zoned entirely I2 heavy industrial. That was consistent with the 2018 master plan, which identified this area of the city with the corresponding use category. In the fall of 2022, staff was contacted, and I believe the city manager's office was contacted by a number of members of the real estate community who were having issues with folks being able to get financing for the homes in this area. And the reason they were having issues with that was because the heavy industrial zoning rendered all of the single-family uses in this area legal non-conforming at that point. So at that point, there was no guarantee that should a house be destroyed, that it could be constructed or it could be reconstructed again. That was the impetus for the rezoning of this area from heavy industrial to R1A single family. Following the Planning Commission hearing and the introduction of the item, staff was contacted by the owner of this property, who has a somewhat unique situation. In that the property, as you see it depicted on page number 6 of your packet, what you see on page 6 of the packet is the property as it existed before the 2023 rezone of this area. The portion of the property on there that fronts onto Newtown Avenue has a single-family home on it, and that is why this property was included as a part of the rezoning of this area to single-family residential. There are a handful of parcels along West Columbia Avenue, generally larger vacant parcels or ones that were already occupied by a commercial use that were left I-2 to allow for continued commercial use and future commercial uses. This portion of the parcel here that's along West Columbia Avenue, the property owner has been using as storage space for like asphalt and fill type products. Looking back at the GIS photos that we have on file, which go back to 2016, shows basically a consistent use of this property for that purpose, going back to that point. As such, regardless of the zoning of this property, it's considered a legal non-conforming use at this point. What the proposed rezoning here today would do would take the portion of the property that's along West Columbia Avenue and rezone it back to the I-2 that it existed in prior to the 2023 rezone to allow for any potential future development of the property for any kind of a commercial purpose. This area of West Columbia for parcels that have frontage strictly on West Columbia, it's unlikely, at least in our estimation, that they would likely be developed at any point for residential use, especially larger strips like this. This is the strip that is immediately adjacent to the northeast of Arlene's truck stop. The Arlene's truck stop has maintained its I-2 zoning as well. And so that was the reason why this is being brought here today. It's basically kind of a cleanup item on that, on what was done in 2023. If you take a look at page 7 of your packet, you'll see the aerial depiction of the property with a red line overlaid. What staff worked with the property owner to do following that rezoning was have his parcel split, which was then effective for tax year 2024, so that this could eventually be done. Staff was very intentional in doing this the way we did it because with the intent of not allowing any further encroachment of commercial activity toward Newtown Avenue. So the property owner was made aware that that portion of the property will not be proposed to be rezoned to I-2. That portion of the property is to stay single-family residential, which is what it's currently used for. And it also then allows for, again, for the continued protection of that area of Newtown Avenue. So that's just in brief what this item is, and it's a little bit of history on kind of how we ended up here. If anyone has any questions, I can go ahead and try to answer those.
Yeah, are there any clarifying or technical questions of the commissioners? Yes?
On page 7, the red line that is indicated there, I'm assuming that's an arbitrary line.
That's an approximation.
Why can't we do a line that is equal to the property line on either side of that property, rather than indenting it a little bit?
So the slight indent that you see there was to try and accommodate a setback for that garage that you see on the north side of the lot line. So it was to try to ensure that the single-family home to the south was set back far enough
Do that now, yeah.
to not have a legal non-conforming.
Thank you.
But also,
Yeah, thank you.
That used to be called the Rock Shop.
Did it?
When I was in Boy Scouts, we'd go
Yeah.
out there all the time.
Yeah.
Travis, were there any other lots that we would need to change? I'm just trying to think, because of the change that we made a few years ago.
Not any to my knowledge right now. We've not been approached by anybody else in the time since then. Certainly if we're approached by anyone additional, we'll take that into consideration. Additionally, this may be an area that we look at as the master planning process continues through the rest of this year and into next year for how we're going to look at this area going forward. It's always going to be a little bit disjointed just given the nature of the uses in this area and the and the location of it, especially with relation to the highway, combined with the TIFA's ownership of a number of properties in this area. There's a lot going on. Staff has, at least to the best of our ability, tried to create a situation where we try to, as best as possible, respect the existing uses that are there, while hopefully, at least for these parcels like this, preparing them for any potential future commercial use, while trying to, as best as possible, like I said, respect the residential uses.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I do have a couple, but, okay. Does the proposed industrial zoning, does that allow for outdoor bulk storage of materials like this and heavy equipment? And then if so, is it permitted by right, or would it need special use?
So regardless of whether, right now, whether it's permitted by right, regardless of which zoning district it's in, the use being existing, it's still considered a legal, non-conforming use. So that's going to be the case whether it's zoned I-2 or it's zoned R1A. As an aside, because I know we had some correspondence that had some concerns about potential nuisance type issues. City attorney and I had discussed this prior to the meeting. We'll have to look at the nuisance section of the ordinance. That's outside of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
But if there is anything that's going on the property that runs afoul of the nuisance ordinance, whether that be the noise portion of the ordinance or any kind of creation of fumes or dust or any other item that may be addressed in the nuisance section of the ordinance, we can take a look at that on a separate basis. But that doesn't really necessarily pertain to the zoning strictly of the property.
Okay. So I would assume that that would also cover hours of operation, those sorts of things as well, in those uses.
There's, within the nuisance ordinance, there are references to hours of construction operation. The city attorney and I talked briefly about this. We may have to look at the language of it
Yep.
to ensure that it's specific enough to this sort of use
Yep.
that we could apply it. There may be other portions as well of the nuisance ordinance that could be looked at, but we'll have to do a little further analysis on.
And that's, you had stated a separate matter than what this is.
It would be. It's a matter that can be addressed regardless of the zoning of the parcel, and it's not dependent on the zoning of the parcels.
Okay. And then the other thing was regarding, now that the parcel is split, the industrial fronting on Columbia now, Columbia being technically the new front yard, are there any implications there with front, rear, side yard, setbacks, stuff like that? Any other implications as far as parking or storage, now that that is kind of changing?
So the regular setbacks, if it were rezoned to I-2, the typical setbacks of the I-2 zoning district would then apply to anything in the future that was constructed. So side, rear, front, side, and rear setbacks, parking setbacks, which are generally going to be 10 feet from any right-of-way, and I believe it's 5 feet from any lot line. All of those will apply to the parcel if it were ever developed for any additional or for any other use in the future.
Okay.
But just to be clear, again, any future development of the parcel does not include any portion along Newtown. That portion is strictly for residential use and for uses that are permitted in the R1A district.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to public comment now for the rezoning request, number R01-25. Please state your name and address. This is a time to share your support or concerns. Let us know what aspects are most concerning. Please remember that this is a time for public input and not back and forth debate. Thank you. We'll take public comments.
My name is Cheryl Doust. I live at 251 Newtown Avenue.
Can you pull the microphone down by your mouth, please? Thank you.
Sorry. The comment I have is, was this ever approved to even start? And if it was illegal to start because of the zoning, why did it happen and why weren't we let know? At night, the banging and the noise is, and I live across the street from it. The other people live pretty much by it. And if you were third shift, second shift, you're not getting any sleep. Your kids aren't getting any sleep. I've lived out there 48 years, and it's been a wonderful place to live. And yes, Mr. Peck's rock shop was there. I think we all have gone, you know. But he never had it where it was congested or noisy and what is this tar doing to our drinking water? I mean, you know, we just put a brand new well in. So what's all this seeping down into the ground doing to the wells on that side, not counting coming across? And that's my main concern, is that I don't mind Arlene's truck stop there. I don't mind the Shell station. I don't mind overhead doors. They were established long before I moved out there. But now that I'm a member of that neighborhood, you just kind of move in and you take over the place and want to take our land and our property and put, toxic stuff on the ground that could be in my well water. I mean, I live at the end of the airport. Am I getting PFOBs? I knew that when I moved in. The train tracks is behind me. I knew the noise from that. But this is uncalled for, because I've got neighbors that work third and second. My grandson used to live with us on third shift, and he couldn't get any sleep at night because you couldn't open the windows. Our bedroom's in the front of the house, and at night you can hear that bam, 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 and that's not fair. If you established a neighborhood over all these years, and then all of a sudden you want to turn it into commercial, people have bought those lots that come up to Columbia Avenue, except for Mr. Peck's. And I have nothing against the man who bought Mr. Peck's, except I feel he did this kind of sneaky, bringing in the tar and the noise and everything without us being consulted. And would you like it in your neighborhood? I don't. And Battle Creek Unlimited owns a bunch of land behind us. Why couldn't they rent from Battle Creek Unlimited? Why take up a neighborhood where families had built their families? We've worked, we've paid, we toiled to keep our places nice, and then this happens? It's not right. And I used to live down on 1365 East Michigan for 3-4 years. We never had that mess, and we moved out there, and I thought, what a great neighborhood. My kid can go out and ride her bike and do everything. She won't do it now, she's 50. But that's my main concern, is why are we rezoning a neighborhood for commercial use when we've always participated with the businesses that existed when we moved there? We knew what we were getting into. And it's a beautiful neighborhood. It shouldn't be destroyed. I'm sorry, but it shouldn't be.
Thank you. Are there any further comments?
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Diana Stibe. I live at 266, and all that asphalt's right behind my house and my garage. I moved in 8 years ago. There was beautiful woods behind me. Now there's heavy equipment. I had my daughter move home from Florida with her 2-year-old. Bedroom faces that. She couldn't sleep. The baby kept getting woke up several times a night. Now that he's a little bit older, but and heavy industrial, that's different than, I think it's different than commercial. I'm used to, overhead door, Arlene's truck stop, and the Shell station, that's commercial. But heavy industrial, it says like they could put a factory. For factories, where there'd be a lot of people, a lot of cars. And it's just, when I look out any of my back windows, I see a mountain of tar that is taller than my garage. The trees have been falling down onto the neighbor's property, and I'm afraid some of them are leaning toward my garage. It's just ugly. The woods were beautiful. And I lived there by myself, and I felt okay being there, even with Arlene's. But now I don't know. We've had people walk across that tar, like at the fence line. We've had kids back there. There's no way to keep them out. It doesn't say private property, there's no gates, there's no fence around it, and it just keeps getting taller. So it's very disturbing and ugly. And I think commercial is different than heavy industrial, so from my Googling it. But it's ugly. It's really ugly and noisy. And I moved there because as a kid, we'd go to West Columbia to Kalamazoo, and I'd always look down the road, and I wonder what's back there. Well, I didn't know back when I was 16 that when I was 50-something or 60 that I'd be moving in there, but I'm glad I did. Well, until now I have to listen to all that and wonder about my well water. And I don't want to move, not at 71. But I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'm Bill Gibson, I'm the owner there, so this has been going on a bit since, for 30 years, but right now with the 94 project going, this last couple of years is the only time that any nighttime work's been going on there. So they use that as a place to put it, and then they load it up and take it on to Kalamazoo in the daytime, after the nighttime. So when the nighttime work gets done, it's very seldom that they're even dumping up there at night. When they do, they try to start at 8 o'clock, and then they're done at midnight. Try to get done at midnight with, bringing it in, but that's what they're talking about, the noise, as far as, other than that, it's, when they dump in there, it's generally in the daytime. So, isn't that right? They have, how many times have they been in there this year? As far as night, past
He's going to
midnight.
address us.
Sir,
Right.
can you address us,
Oh,
please?
okay.
Yeah,
Well, I just was answering some of their questions, that they.
absolutely.
Oh, that's,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
All right, any further public comments? All right, seeing none, thank you to all who have provided your input. We do appreciate your engagement. I will now close the public comment period and open the floor for deliberations amongst planning commissioners. Commissioners, share your thoughts, ask questions. Any thoughts on how to proceed?
Well, myself, I have a couple of questions here.
Shoot away.
Pardon me?
Go.
Okay. Can I have a drink?
Not mine.
All right. So, just kidding. So, I'm just thinking, on both sides, as a contractor, a guy has a business, and he's had it there for a long time and trying to make a living. And then we have the neighbors out there with the noise and stuff. And I was wondering if there's some way we could just take a break on this for 30 to 60 days to try to work through some of the stuff on the timing when they're there working. That's the biggest thing in the timing. What time should they be closed, not working, or do that? I don't know if that can be worked out. The water thing can be looked at and handled. It could be addressed through investigation. I think the health department would be able to help with that, and the city of Battle Creek. So my thought is to table this thing for 30 to 60 days, and just want to know if there's any other thoughts on that.
Any additional thoughts from commissioners? Commissioner Banky, any thoughts? Yeah, we'll go Commissioner Gray.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for coming out. I had a question related to just environmental, has that been addressed around, is that part of the application process to make sure that all of the actions of a business owner on that property have received state approval, et cetera, around anything environmental on that property?
So regarding the existing use of the property, because it was existing and existing prior to when the current zoning was enacted, this portion of the property has not been through site plan review or any other process that would normally potentially bring into play those sorts of investigations or those sorts of reports or confirmation that would have to be provided by a property owner. Again, we can take a look at the use itself, but the use, it's the existing use itself is still separate from the zoning piece of the property, if that makes sense. So because that has not been through site plan review or a formal permitting process, it is not, and that's just as it's an existing use.
So just so I make sure I understand, you're saying, say this was approved, it would go through that process, or no?
Right now, regardless of what it's zoned, it's still treated as an existing legal non-conforming use.
So it would not?
So it would not. There'd be nothing right now to trigger site plan review or any formal application for a permit or anything. So that's, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then what is so is this, just to get an understanding of what the neighbors are expressing as concerns around noise and the time of day it's happening, can I get an understanding, is that the day-to-day business, that's the nature of this business? This is not a period in time, or is this a period in time? And this is not expected to happen long-term, or kind of give me an understanding there?
So I'm not terribly familiar with the owner, the property owner's specific use of the property as far as hours of operation or items like that. But again, if there is something that's happening at the property that's in violation of the nuisance ordinance, that can be dealt with regardless of the zoning. The zoning doesn't necessarily impact that. That nuisance violation would still exist regardless of the zoning.
And that is, for what is in front of us today, is unfortunately a separate matter. The industrial use classification designation, if you will, is kind of what is before us today, not necessarily the existing user or owner.
Correct.
Yeah. It's a little difficult because it was existing, there was a change, and now there's a correction trying to be made.
Yeah. And to clarify, it was prior to the 2020 rewrite of the zoning ordinance. It was a commercial use classification. It was a commercial zoning classification. It's a zoning classification that no longer exists under the current zoning ordinance.
Right.
But in 2018, when the master plan was put together, the land use plan identified this as a heavy industrial type of use, or it identified the future use type as corresponding with the heavy industrial zoning district. That's why the recommendation would be made. If we were to recommend rezoning it to some other commercial zoning district right now, it would be considered a spot zone because it doesn't correspond with the land use plan, and it's as I-2, it would be contiguous again with existing I-2, with there being the truck stop right next door. If we attempted to go with a different zoning district, that could certainly be viewed as a spot zone. There'd be no basis for it.
The parcels essentially from the industrial park south down Columbia all the way to 94 and down to even Watkins Road are all industrial I-2. And then the zoning change for the residences happened, And then in that time, I think even to Mayor Banky's comment, not all of those single-family residence lots were rezoned to residential. There still are other additional industrial lots in there.
There are a handful
Yeah.
of them.
So it's not that it's a not existing use to the neighborhood.
Correct. And to go to your point, it prior to that 2022 or 20, it was late 2022, early 2023, prior to that rezone of this area to single family, it was all entirely zoned
Industrial.
I2 heavy industrial.
And the master plan, land use plan, has this, to this day, listed as production and employment center use.
Correct, which corresponds with the I2 heavy industrial district.
Okay.
So that's the reason for the proposed district.
Yes, sir.
So I guess my question, is mirroring on some of that Commissioner Gray said, is the current property owner utilizing the land in the manner that it was zoned?
In the manner,
It's
in the manner that it was zoned in prior to
that
the,
is currently zoned.
When,
I would say not in the manner that it's currently zoned. Likely in the manner that it was.
There are nuisance ordinances about the noise that the neighborhood is experiencing after dark that certainly could be mitigated by the city.
Correct. That's one item that, like I said, the city attorney and I had discussed briefly before we came in here. We may need to look at the noise ordinance to make sure that the language is written in such a way that it can be applicable. But the nuisance ordinance is applicable to every property in the city, regardless of its current, previous zoning, current use, previous use. It still applies to each property within the city. So regardless of whether it's currently zoned R1A or I2, or it was previously zoned I2, or when the use was established, the use has to always still comply with the provisions of the noise ordinance, which is separate from the zoning ordinance.
and I think going a little further in that too, in addressing, there was a comment about, a question about when the use began, and it kind of started out of nowhere. You had mentioned, Travis, that imaging shows in 2016 this use was there. The use, when it started, was it permitted by its zoning at that time? Or do we not know?
I would need to take a look at the old zoning ordinance, the no longer effective zoning ordinance, to see what the list of permitted uses in that area was at that time. The other challenging thing is, piece of this is that we then would have to go back potentially further than 2016, where I'm not certain right now that we have
Yeah.
existing, I don't want to call it evidence, but of what the previous use of the property was. So we would have to look into that further at that point. But again, I would say that that's going to exist regardless of what the zoning is of the property, because whether or not a use was legally established at the time that it was permitted, is still going to hold regardless of whether it's zoned single family or heavy industrial.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments or questions from commissioners? We do not have a motion.
Do we happen to have any record or feedback on noise complaints
This is
regards to this property?
This was the first that we were made aware of complaints regarding this. If obviously having been brought to our attention, we deal with them the same way we deal with every complaint that's brought to our attention, which is to look into, to investigate it. But prior to these comments, we had not received any concerns, so.
So I will say, I live on Robertson Avenue, which is in this neighborhood. I mean, my son loves the fact that there's an excavator there, but There certainly are some concerns with noise. I will say that that is certainly true. As a commissioner, though, I am kind of conflicted that it is consistent with the master plan, aligned with the other zoning in the area, those sorts of things. So it's difficult. It is. Are there any further questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll move that to rezone the unaddressed property located along Columbia Avenue, parcel number 0619-41-0 or 700-0, currently zoned R1A, redesignated to I2 heavy industrial.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there support?
Support.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Godfrey, supported by Commissioner Benke. Are there any questions or comments on the motion by commissioners?
I would certainly like to, kind of in the spirit of Commissioner Morris, to see the owner kind of work through some of the concerns that have been brought forward today in good faith with their neighbors.
Okay. I think, Marcel, can I look to you for some guidance on some of the questions that have been posed? There's been a motion, it's been supported. It seems like there's still some concern on answering some questions. Is there, I guess I don't have a real definite question going forward, but in a manner of addressing some of these concerns, I'm looking kind of what are the actionable items going forward? Or what is the potential there?
This body is looking at this request that will then be presented to the city commission. Not next week, probably the June 16th, 17th meeting. So there's an opportunity between today and then to address it.
Yeah.
I think one or two commissioners talked about adjourning this item
Yep.
to either 30 days out, 60 days out, something like that, to allow time. But what would staff be doing?
That's, so,
You would need to want to make that clear to them.
yeah.
So, right now you have a motion and a second on the table, so
Yep.
you would need to address, whether you're going, how to deal with that or not deal with that first.
Yep.
If you want someone, you can withdraw the motion, the person who made the motion could withdraw it, or you could run and see if it passes or not.
Okay.
What,
Are there, I think, let's think. Because we have a motion that's been supported. There's still concern regarding time and questions.
Is that a question?
Yeah. What was your question?
well, to go back to, I understand, the community there, understand the business has been there for a long time. One of the things is the noise. I don't know if there's something that could be really worked out, maybe put into this motion. Maybe even, like I said, just postpone it for 30 days, maybe 60 the most, and work things out in the neighborhood to try to make everybody happy with the noise that's there. And the individual, and they're making a living that he has for a long time on that site. So the noise thing would be, to me, is the biggest thing right now. So if there's any way that we can amend that to do that, or the other way is to try to get this thing worked out before the city commission meeting, and let the city commission meeting do that. So as far as make a decision, if some of these questions get answered and somewhat things get worked out with the noise and so on.
Yes?
Is the these concerns? Like, had they the opportunity to come here today and address those concerns?
So we've heard from the owner today,
Right, but
but not addressed the concerns that you're stating.
I'm asking if they were aware of those concerns before and had an opportunity to address them before coming here today.
No. And to be clear too, the application was made by the city because this was kind of kicked off by us rezoning that entire area. So it wasn't an application from the owner.
Yeah.
That feedback, again, that obviously that was received today was just received this afternoon. There was one previous piece of correspondence, but again, that wasn't provided to the owner. It wasn't provided to the owner particularly. It was included in the packet here today. So to answer your question, I guess the best I can, I would say at this point, no, the owner has not had an opportunity to respond directly to the concerns.
I guess what I'm getting to is, I'll talk to Marcel. Are we able to ask for that, that in good faith, working with residents toward resolve, to be able to hear by the time it comes before the city commission, what result has come from those conversations?
I believe you can make that request, and we know that the property owner is sitting here. But again, the application is from the city.
I know.
And
Right.
this, my understanding, like you, is that this was the first that
That they're hearing.
may have been brought aware of a noise issue, and the city is going to look at whether the noise ordinance covers this type of activity at the property. Which, again, it's a separate issue,
Right.
entirely separate issue from zoning.
Yep, I understand that's a separate issue. It's really difficult because you understand somebody needs to, make a living.
That seems to be the major
At
issue.
the same time, you want to be comfortable in your home and your home surroundings. And certainly the concerns, again, good faith effort, even though they don't have to make sure that what they're putting out as far as materials is safe for the environment that they are in. I think those good faith efforts around noise and the environment would go a long way. And so if there could be either a friendly amendment or a postponement while we as a city identify what options there are around the nuisance ordinance, because I know we're saying this is simply a zoning issue and not a nuisance or environmental issue. That's not what's before us. I get that, but they are tied.
Well, the body does have the ability to, it's been discussed by at least 2 commissioners, to postpone consideration of this to another date. So at least 2 of the body is talking about that.
Yes.
So, if you want to discuss that, a motion could be made to do that. In the main motion,
Has to be voted on.
it would have to be voted on.
Or withdrawn.
The existing owner and its use is going to be legally non-conforming if we rezone or do not rezone today, correct?
Correct.
Either way.
So even if we don't approve the rezone today, the existing use will continue. So in my eyes, pushing off a decision, that's my question, is what if we postpone, what is the action for staff in that time? What can we do? I mean, as a planning commission,
Well, we could come back and tell you whether the noise ordinance
is
would
being,
do anything or not. I mean, I know that the noise ordinance talks about construction and demolition of buildings between certain hours.
Right.
Beyond that, I don't know that it deals with unloading and unloading of trucks.
An actual use.
That this particular use is going to, or what the complaints are.
Right.
Look at those, and whether any of that would subject the property owner to a civil infraction.
Okay.
It seems to me that, listening to the neighbors, that the issue is not how the land is, the zoning, it's how the land is being utilized by the current owner.
Correct.
And we haven't heard anybody come up here and stand and say, don't rezone it. They're saying the current property owner is making living in this neighborhood uncomfortable. And I realize that we're not addressing that in this particular issue, but that seems to be the issue.
Right.
Before I withdraw my motion, I think we need to give it a thought about passing the motion and moving this on to the city commission and letting them work on this.
Okay.
I'm okay with that, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? We vote.
Commissioner Morse?
Yes.
Mayor Banky?
Yes.
Commissioner Godfrey?
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Motion is approved. So the question was, when would it go to the city commission? Not the third, most likely the meeting after?
Yeah, typically, I think the city attorney's looking it up, but typically items when they come before the planning commission and then get advanced to the city commission, usually because of timing, it's not the immediately following city commission meeting, it'll be the one after that. So yeah, it'd be the second meeting in June would be,
Okay.
when it'd be brought for an introduction. So it'd be a 2-meeting process, introduction and then action.
June 17th.
Okay. So then to clarify, Travis, what you just said, it'll be an introduction and then there will be, so the residents who are notified for this hearing today will get notified again at a later date.
So there will not be a separate notice for that. The notices that are provided within 300 feet of the affected property, that's in compliance with the State Zoning Enabling Act. And so that hearing is held here today. That public hearing is held at the Planning Commission level. There is not a requirement in the act for notification if that decision is then advanced to the legislative level.
Okay. Okay. So I would just say thank you to all the residents who came today. Please continue to reach out, contact with any questions or concerns regarding this, and look forward to city commission meetings. All right. Thank you again to everyone who participated in that discussion. It was not an easy one. Any old business?
Can I just say something?
There will be a time for comment at the end. Yep, just 1 second. Any old business?
No old business.
Okay, new business. It looks like we've got the 2024 annual report.
So before you on your desk today, you've got a copy of the 2024 annual report. Just to bring to everyone's attention, I believe that a working copy was included in your original packet. You'll notice today, if you look down at the lower left-hand corner, there's a revised date on there this is the fully edited version. There were a couple of chart numbers that didn't correspond correctly with the narrative, and so I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Biggest highlight, at least as far as it pertains to the Planning Commission in this, is if you take a look at the numbers of special use permits that are being brought before the Planning Commission. And although not directly related to the Planning Commission, it is somewhat the number of variance applications being brought to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Both of those numbers have dropped pretty precipitously here in the last couple of years. We feel like it's a result of continued amendment of the ordinance to to better work with, better align with uses in, throughout the city, or what folks are asking for. I think it's also streamlined the process a little bit better, so we're hopefully saving some folks from having to go through an additional process of coming before the Planning Commission and the City Commission for uses that can otherwise be handled administratively. So that's the biggest highlight that I can really point out, like I said, pertaining specifically to the Planning Commission, but if anybody has any questions about specifics of the report, we can answer them.
Okay. Are there any questions on this report? None? Is there any action we need to take on this?
There's no action required. This is a report that's, each municipality is required to have compiled each year. There is no action required by the Planning Commission. This is provided for informational purposes, and then it will also be provided at a City Commission meeting for the City Commission's information.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, staff, for putting that together. Are there any other new business items?
No.
All right, now we will take comment by the public. Cheryl?
I want it understood, I do not mind that he has a business going. That has always been a commercial business with the rock shop, but we've never had to deal with the loud noises. We didn't have to worry about groundwater. If he would have put another rock shop in, so be it. It was a wonderful place. But to have this heavy equipment and the tar, you've got to know that that tar is getting in the groundwater. You have to understand that. And we have to live there. We have to maintain our properties. In other words, the city will be coming in and tagging us and making us do stuff with our property. And I don't mind if he has a business, not that business. That business causes noise, it causes who knows what is going in my ground. In fact, I applaud him for starting his own business and having a business. But when you keep saying it was always commercial, yes, with respect to the neighborhood. This is not respectful to the neighborhood. And that's what you all should be considering, is what we have to live in. We love our homes. You love your home. You would do anything to save your home, the noise, everything. There has to be vacant land somewhere that he could put that blacktop. It shouldn't have to be in our neighborhood. And that's all I expect. You know, I pay taxes. I didn't come and scream when Battle Creek Unlimited bought the land behind me. That's their right. But they haven't really done anything with it, which is whatever they do, I'll have to live with. But this, I shouldn't have to live with. This is not proper. You're taking, you know, our rights as a citizen of that neighborhood away from us, and that's not fair, just because he wants to have a business like he has. So please take that into consideration.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments at this time on anything in beyond that petition? All right. Are there any comments by staff or commission members? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.